Oh, oh. How are you? And greetings from Niagara Falls. There's a powerful teaching in the maps of Sanatana Dharma that shares Sano Buddhya Shubhaya Samyunaktu. And what this means in English, may the divine grace me with positive thoughts. May the divine change my thinking so that I uplift myself. That is a lovely prayer. But now the question is, this seems abstract. How does this become manifest? Tomorrow, Monday, August 19th, we commence registration for our 2024-2025 courses. We have 5 guides. We have a course or culture every day for kids all the way to seniors. We design our courses to be 32 weeks long. Out of 52 weeks a year, more than 60% of those weeks are filled with studying self-development. Today's workshop in our mentorship Sangha is our 32nd workshop. I've challenged our team to format our workshop so that this becomes an entire course, that people can take up a course on wellness, from stress management to relating with siblings. The Mentorship Sangha's wellness workshops are an expression of how grace gets manifest. There's more positive thinking, there's more uplifting thinking. Zooming into what we're going to explore tonight. Whenever you read or hear the word generation, what comes to your mind? Please share in the chat. Whenever you read the word generation, hear the word generation, what do you think of? Millennials. Yes. Millennials are Generation Y? Are they synonyms? Okay. An era. Mm-hmm. Ageism. Yes. Yes. These are all relevant words. When I think of generation, I think of change. In terms of iPhones, there's different generations of iPhones, and there's more and more changes, correct? When we think of schooling, how our grandparents studied and we studied, and now our kids study, there's change. And wherever there's change, there has to be adaptation. In very wintry places, like in Alaska, you can't drive on certain roads without putting chains on your tires. Now, all those in Raleigh, all those in Maryland and Virginia, you don't understand that. That's like a movie for you. But you see, with that change, there has to be an adaptation. This is especially the case when it comes to sharing self-development. Our community is trying. We are giving our best to adapt to the change in generations, to encourage them to follow self-development. We've been doing this through giving resources. Our parents, our grandparents, whenever they donated, they typically donated to faith-based charities. Now we support so many non-faith-based charities which everyone can rally around, especially environmental charities. We are giving in terms of time. We have such diverse and specific retreats on parenting, on marriage, youth camps. We are giving our effort. This year's entire Seeker to Facilitator program, which we're now calling Enhanced Seva Training, is on how we can understand and so teach better in our Balavera context. Just because I'm an uncle of some sort doesn't make me a teacher. I have to understand my students and adapt to them. So we are trying our best to adapt to the change of generations. And my final thought in this before our team continues, this is visionary work. Whatever creates a succession plan is visionary work. We may just think this is a wellness workshop or this is a mentorship sangha, but if you zoom out to the big picture, whatever is affecting a succession plan is visionary work. Good for all of you for being active in this visionary work. Team, please continue.
Hari Om, everyone. My name is Varsha, and I am privileged to be able to share on behalf of our Safety of Society team. We will just get started right away. So we'll cover things like, why was this team formed, what we've done, our community's impact, and next steps. So essentially, we just want to share how, Vivekji has provided us an opportunity, and the community has just shown up, and how supportive everybody has been, and what the metrics look like today. So first, why was this team formed? Right. So safety is something that we take for granted sometimes. We're all privileged to have, our basic needs met, and we can engage in self-development, and not everybody's that lucky. So it's our responsibility to help others whose safety needs aren't met. And looking at this slide, most of us have heard the story about, when they're trying to build the bridge to get to Lanka, and all these monkeys are carrying heavy boulders, stones to make the bridge. And however, there's this little squirrel there. It's so tiny, and then if you look at it, that squirrel may not be doing a whole lot. However, Lord Rama was very appreciative of this squirrel, and because squirrel was inspired to do his part in helping the Lord. And so similarly for us, the problems seem huge, right? Especially when it comes to firearm violence, domestic violence, etc. But we can also do our little part for the divinity. We have, here you can see some pictures on the left of what our community has done. On the left is a picture from a PTA meeting, and the topic was safe gun storage at a high school library. The middle one is a picture with, Rachana at her policymakers at a state capitol. And the last one is at a yearly Pride Parade for Moms Demand Action organization, and helping LGBTQ plus who are more at risk for firearm violence. And so, that was a great place for Lavanya to be. We also have a list of workshops listed down there. Those are the workshops that we have conducted, the team has conducted with our community since last summer to educate all of us. And I know personally, I've learned a lot of things that I didn't know about, and hopefully everybody else has too. And so what have we done, and what's been our impact to the society? And, we are so happy to be part of this community that's done all these things. We'll start at the bottom, donating, right? We've more than met our goal, 101% to 2 charities. Second to last, inspiration, our Sunday satsangs. Everybody's been great about attending those. we've actually got 152% because this wellness workshop was something that was planned later that was not necessarily part of our initial plan of satsang. So we're exceeding our goal there. One where we need help, which I think you guys might have seen a lot of announcements on our social media everywhere, is the communication portion. I think we've come a long way, especially in the last few days. Vivekji has been inspiring us at Meaningful Morning as well. And so we hope that, if you have not had a chance to do this, that you will help support this goal this week so we can get to 100%. What can you do next? We can continue to make a difference. The first one is, if you have not connected with us on WhatsApp, you can connect with like-minded folks on our WhatsApp group. We'll see a link in the chat soon, so you can use that to join our group. The second is learn. We can all continue to learn about our federal and state laws. Our election will be coming up in November, and our vote matters and counts, right? So if you're educated on who we're voting for and what we're voting for. The advocate is a part that we just talked about earlier, about communicating with our policymakers. So let's continue to do that. And then last one, if you want to do even more above and beyond what we've talked about, feel free to reach out to groups like Be Smart and Moms Demand Action to join and make more of a difference. And last but not least, if you want to be more involved in the coming year, basically our topic for next year will be domestic violence or intimate partner violence, as it's being referred to. We'll put our email addresses of the Safety of Society team in the chat here. So feel free to reach out to one of us if you are interested in joining that team. Or if you just have any questions, or if you are feeling inspired and just want to share your reflections, we'd be happy to hear from you. And that is all I have. So I will stop sharing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Varsha, for summarizing our efforts for safety initiative. Just want to echo Varsha's sentiments in my appreciation and gratitude to this community for taking Safety for All movement personally. And as Vivekji has shared, taking up deleting not me. I'm super excited to introduce our facilitators for today's workshop. When we think about creating physical and emotional safe spaces, even when we think about the organizations that we have supported this summer, like Guitars Over Guns and ROCA, one population group that always comes up as our focus is our youth. And that is going to be what we focus on in this workshop. Our first facilitator is Jayshree. I've known Jayshree and her family for a long time as we have served in my mission in Raleigh, North Carolina together. She is currently a high school teacher by profession and has been teaching K-12 students for over 17 years now. She's very passionate about helping and learning the Gen Z mindsets and tendencies in order to be able to mindfully and meaningfully connect with them. She's also a parent to 3. Our second facilitator is Shruti. Many of you may know her through Dedicated Seva with Chinmay Mission, Washington, D.C., as well as Mentorship Sangha. She is based in Northern Virginia and is about to enter her 8th year of teaching in a professional high school setting. Shruti is excited to share her love and knowledge with everyone to better relate to the younger generation. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you, Lavinia, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you to you, the wellness team. Thank you to Vivekji for giving me this opportunity to share my limited knowledge on how to relate to the next generation. From where I stand, I am not by any means a qualified individual, but understanding the next generation is really in the role of a high school teacher, like Lavinia said. I witness the day-to-day interactions with teens, specifically Gen Z, that fall in that 1997 to 2012 years. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about what I see. So the question I'm going to start with is, can you guys relate to these behaviors? Very much so. Okay, yes. We know that these behaviors are very prominent in our teens. And even, like I was saying, Gen Zs, you may be a grandparent or a parent or an older sibling that may be experiencing this, right? So the question I have for you is, do you frown on these behaviors or do you accept them? And for this, I want you to just make a mental note and remember what you're saying to yourself, because after we go through this, answer that in your own mind as to whether you frown or accept. So one of the things that, like Vivekji said, we have to do is if we're trying to connect or relate to this next generation, whatever that may be, right, for all of you here, we have to shift our mindsets, right? That idea of change. Vivekji has also said in satsangs that the nature of living is change, right? And so in trying to relate to the next generation, there needs to be a shift of a mindset, of our mindset, and more so if you are cohabiting with this generation. And I love this quote. It's by Dr. Wayne Dyer. The quote says, "If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." So, of course, this tells you it's all about perspective, right? And how we have to change the perspectives that we have, you know, that with this generation that is so different to maybe how we grew up, right? So a couple of steps that we want to do is understand, one, and two, help. So how can we do this? So there's so much that are in terms of challenges that our youth is facing, right? And so we could go all night talking about this, but we don't have all night. So 3 themes that I chose personally were these 3. The first is uncertainty. The second is their relationship with identity. And the third is their emotional well-being. Now, when it comes to uncertainty, and I don't know, sometimes people use the word insecurity. I don't like using that. I think like it has a negative connotation. But specifically on uncertainty, I'm talking about uncertainty of direction, right? If you can look at this signpost over here and kind of imagine your teen's mind being like this, there are just so many disoriented type of emotions, let's say. And this may happen in different areas. For example, in the academic world, right? If you do have a teen in your house, you know that there's a plethora of subjects that they can choose, you know, within their high school or even middle school, if we needed to go back a little bit. There are so many activities that you know, there's that societal norm, right? You have to be, you know, involved in certain number of activities, etc. When you go to college, you almost have to choose a major that takes you towards a profession, and you're still a teen. Social issues, these are very prominent, right? These are things that could cause uncertainty within teens, right? Bullying, drug usage, depression, physical disorders, all of this, right? Politics, especially now where we're at, these are very, very present in our schools. And also, because of all of this, right, this could really affect the teen with self-confidence, which then adolescents sometimes fall prey to the bullying, and all of this other stuff happens too, right? The bulimia, anorexia, etc. A lot of times, adolescents are disoriented because of family situations in terms of communications and confrontations within the family, right? There's sometimes is that I don't understand why you're doing this kind of thing, right? And so there's a little bit of that, miscommunication or not able to communicate at all with family members. There may be personal experiences, right? This is a very real situation. If someone moves schools or states, I know that this one feels very much out of our control when a family member changes a job and you have to move away. And so then the whole family starts working on adapting, but it's not as easy. It's not as easy for a teen to adapt, right? We know that adaptability is a strength, or at least a lot of adults do believe that, but it's hard for a child to realize that. So how can we help specifically on these four areas? With uncertainty of direction, if you can think about this, I love using visuals. So if you can think about this traffic warden and how he's directing traffic, right? Think of this traffic as the thoughts within your teen's head, right? So they need a little bit of security. And so you need to direct those thoughts, right? So when it comes to academic, I think this, I don't want to say this happens in many families, but I have seen just a witness, going back to my witnessing, where parents will impose the idea of what academic worthiness is, what their idea of academic worthiness is, right? Same with what their idea of an activity worthiness is, right? There's a lot of pressure already. So the idea here is to ease that pressure and engage in dialogue. And, if you really don't understand what that worthiness is, or you're trying to understand from the academic standpoint or that extracurricular, then ask a counselor, ask a teacher, ask for help. On the social issues, this is very much, as I said earlier, an existing problem amongst teens. Just to give you an idea, I have a statistic over here. It's set out by the National Center for Education Statistics. In 2021 to 22, about 19% of students ages 12 to 18 reported being bullied during school. So it's something that sometimes we think, okay, it's going to go away, but sometimes the severity of this, it can get pretty severe. So don't ignore it, and do get help and do get support. And there are many programs. Again, we are, in the interest of time, we can't share all of them, but there are many programs that do help with how to deal with bullying within school. In terms of family dynamics, if that miscommunication is very prevalent, sometimes it's better to get a person from outside of the family to help with those communications. Sometimes an older sibling can help, maybe a younger if they're mature enough. But I think if there's even a neighbor or a trusted friend that can help with those communications, or at least strengthen them, and even engage in the dialogue that I'm encouraging you to do with your child or with your teen. This is one thing that maybe you might need external help from, right? And it could just be somebody that lives next to you. Personal experiences, again, when you move away, I think this instability is not just for the kids, right? For the teens, right? We just don't know where we're going to land next, right? That's always there with our jobs. A suggestion is, if we want to help, is to get involved with the community to avoid isolation. So whatever community that you are moving into, see if you can get more involved and see how there are different groups that you might be able to get involved in so that your teen does not feel isolated, right? I think we all went through that COVID era, and we all know that isolation was very prevalent then. And that showed us, like, with teens, that really did affect their well-being. The second theme that I wanted to touch on or understand was their relationship with identity. And I will say, before we get into this, this one is a big one, I think, that I see a lot in our classrooms. If I had to categorize, and so it means a lot. Identity is a huge thing for teens. If I had to categorize these different sections of identity, I would say the first one would be sexual orientation and gender identity. And if you need a little bit of a definition, a sexual orientation is really defined as an identity that includes your emotional, romantic, and sexual attraction to others, and behaviors and social affiliations that may result from this attraction. And some teens may explore this during their adolescence phase. And then those are just some examples up there. Gender identity is really an internal sense of how they feel, and it may be different to what the gender that they were born with. And so these are some examples up there as well. Another category of identity is social identity. And specifically here, you know that peers are what teens are very affected by, right? Their social surroundings, their peer influence is really important. They're always seeking for validation on that part. And a lot of times it's not just, right, the second point over here, it's not just the individual validation, but it's also the group validation. So that tends to be very prevalent as well amongst teens. Online identity, I mean, with the pictures that we saw earlier on, you know that this is very, very present in a lot of teens' lives. The self-representation, I mean, the way that they look is really important. That self-image, and also the validation part. Again, here comes the validation, where, you know, they, especially with, you know, the different apps that they're using, they want the sense of approval, whether it's that like, and if you don't get that like, or you don't respond, you know, you will hear that you are ghosting me. I hear that all the time from my teens. So I hope that some of you can relate to that. But yes, the validation is very, very important for them. And I think really the one thing that I wanted to put out here is, why is identity so important for these teens, right? So that sense of belonging is really important. Earlier, I talked about isolation, and that's where, like, they don't want to feel isolated, right? They want to belong to something. Is it a group? Is it, you know, is it just an identity, a specific identity, et cetera, et cetera? It also fosters self-esteem, right? So if there's that very determined self-identity, then there's that self-esteem that they have. And in some senses, it creates that resilience as well, for these teens. And then because of that, right, they can deal with those external pressures, whether it's academic, whether it's family situations, everything that we've already talked about. So how can we help over here with their relationship with identity? So in terms of all of these, right, if we look at this first point over here, we want to be really available and open-minded. This one, I will tell you just very, very honestly, is a very, it's been a challenge even for me as a high school teacher, because it's a very different way of approaching, right? Their identity, right? And so listening to them and really talking to them And so the part over here that I want to say with talking is the approach, right? I think sometimes we are very brash in the way that we may ask a question. And so just an example of here, don't ask the question, are you gay? But instead ask them, have you wondered about your identity? And that may just get into a different conversation, which is good, right? There's that whole dialoguing again. I want to just stress on this, be available. I think Vivekji says this all the time, right? Be present. And one thing he says always is, right, sometimes we're so caught up in our work and everything else, our housework, et cetera, everything else that we are doing. The busyness means that we are less intentional, right? So when you are having this dialogue, make sure that you are also showing your intention, that it's very pronounced, right? That you are being intentional. I missed on the give them the space. Sometimes they may not always come to you right away, right? So it may take a few days, it may take a month, it may take a year, and you might have to give them that space. Be affirming. Yes, there are pronouns that our teens are using. They, you can't judge a book by its cover. You may have to call someone who looks like a girl a he, etc., etc. So don't invalidate their feelings. They will tell you what their gender identity is, and they will tell you also what their pronouns are. Learn to be comfortable with this situation. Like I said earlier, it's taken me a while to be comfortable, and I'm sure others are dealing with this as well. But sometimes the catalyst for this is maybe you need something else. Again, that external help, right? And it may not have to be a person. It might have to be a movie. Maybe it's that cinematic experience, right, that helps you communicate with your teen. Maybe another person's story, like my friend went through this, etc. Encouraging them, yes, we don't have to always talk about just their identity, talk about their other interests, etc., and hobbies. And then always consider professional counseling, because I think sometimes as a culture, we shy away from this. And I just want to put that out there. Do not shy away from this. There's a lot of talented and professional people that can help with things like this. The last one I wanted to talk about is emotional well-being. So the emotional well-being, I chose this particular picture, and it comes from the movie Inside Out 2, one of my favorite movies. For those of you who are not familiar with this movie, there is a 13-year-old girl. Her name is Riley, and in this animation, it shows how she has a handful of emotions that are in her head, right? And what they show in this movie is basically her mind, her head, her mind that is almost like in a control panel with all these different emotions. There was an Inside Out 1. This is the sequel, Inside Out 2. This particular emotion is a new character, and it's the anxiety emotion. And I loved this, when anxiety comes into the movie, he says, I'm anxiety. Where do I put my stuff? And I liked this a lot, because this, to me, speaks out to how adolescents are feeling, right? They come in, they have anxiety, they have stress, depression, and they're like, where can I place this, right? And so we've talked about these because there are many factors that affect their well-being. And so we've talked a lot about these 1 through 6. And I'm just going to focus on these last 3 over here really quickly as I finish up over here. Physical health, I thought this was a really interesting study carried out by CDC. It starts all the way with sleep deprivation. It starts all the way in middle school. 6 out of 10 middle schoolers don't get enough sleep. And then they said 7 out of 10 high schoolers don't get enough sleep. And here it's what they recommend in terms of, kids ages 6 to 12 should get 9 to 12 hours, and then teens should get 8 to 10. So they're clearly not getting enough sleep, and therefore it's affecting their physical health, right? And not to mention their mental health, right? So we're in the understanding phase of these three points at the bottom that we were talking about. One was the physical health. The other one was societal issues, right? So this particular study was carried out by a hospital in Chicago. I am forgetting the name of the hospital, but it's a very well-known hospital. The adolescents, there was a survey that went out to the adolescents in that population, and no surprise, on what were the concerns of most adolescents in terms of societal issues, right? So gun violence, bullying, poverty. You guys can see what those percentages are. They're pretty alarming. And then technology overuse. Well, this goes back to that first picture that we saw. Yes, our children do have their faces in their computers. And again, this shouldn't be surprising to you at all in terms of the numbers over here. More than 8 hours. There's a 40% of teenagers between the ages of 13 and 18 are on their devices for more than 8 hours. So how can we help over here? So, when we look at these like words, they may just seem like words, but we have to realize that acceptance really is that shift, is that mind shift that we need to do if we want to best cohabit with this teen generation, or Generation Z, or the one Alpha. Active listening, and there's where I had said that you need to be able to I think sometimes when we're listening, we're not fully present, and when we're there, we may have even preconceived notions, and we may be always dialoguing ourselves and not actually listening to what they have to say. So support, I feel like this one is very self-explanatory, but I think at all levels, at the personal level, at the family life level, at the academic level, creating a safe environment, to know that your home is a safe environment, that their bedroom is a safe environment, that coming beside you is a safe environment. I think that's really important for them to know. Adaptability, this goes with change. I think shifting your mindset is already adaptability, but it goes back to understanding part of what you understand in terms of willing to adapt, right? And then specialized help, never shy away from that. So these are just ways that we can help them with their emotional well-being. And really, I want to say that we are all in this together. I said that this is my favorite movie. This is when all the emotions are hugging Joy, who is trying to overcome Riley's anxiety. And so she's trying to take control of the control panel. But what I'm trying to say over here is we are all in this together, and we're all dealing with the same issues. I'm going to pass you on to Shruti. Thank you.
Hari Om, everyone. So I have, first of all, gratitude to both teams and Vivekji for giving me this opportunity to speak. I have basically 3 reflections that I wanted to share. Let me just very quickly pull up. Yeah. So before I begin, I just wanted to give a little bit of context, which is that I have only graduated high school about a little bit more than like a decade ago. So when I talk about all of these changes about kids these days and how we relate to our teenagers, I want us to keep in mind that change is exponential. So like Jayshree mentioned, we have to realize that our lives are always changing. Our youth's lives are always changing, and what they're dealing with may feel very, very different than what we did. And so even me, who is not that far removed from their age, I still feel very disconnected at times from them. But at the same time, there are so many things that are very relatable, like was shared earlier, like lack of sleep, like being distracted, like trying to hold on to all of these different sense of identity and belonging that we're trying to deal with. So the biggest thing, again, is this perspective change, this mindset change. We have to remember that now that we are in this technological society that we are in, and it's not going to go away, one of the biggest things is I had a conversation with several students of mine in the future about how sometimes they feel like they always need to be on, because there's always the potential for them to be recorded, someone to take their picture, someone to then post that to social media, someone to just text a conversation that they're having. So they always feel this necessity to be on as a persona almost. And it's very rare for them to have that moment to just relax and really truly be themselves in that safe environment. So it is important to create a space where hopefully you and your youth, whether it's a child, whether it's someone you're mentoring, a student, that, you know, what we're saying is between us in this personal space that we have right now. And I'm not going to record you. I'm not taking your picture to post on social media. You don't need to be your online persona that so many of them have. And I'm sure those of you who interact with, especially teenagers, middle schoolers nowadays, you can see sometimes that there is a shift in how they act in their personality when they're on social media versus when they're just interacting with you in real life. Because I'm sure many of you know that the sensation of posting a picture and being insecure about how am I coming across, right? Do I look like I'm having fun? Do I look good in this picture? Is this the right picture to post? Because maybe, you know, I'm blinking in this one, or I'm not smiling properly, or whatever it is. For them, that's all the time, right? Like, I always need to make sure that my makeup looks good, so that way someone just snaps a picture, I'm not going to look terrible without a filter on. So that's something to keep in mind, that sometimes they're juggling these things. And so that to them, of course, is going to be more important than, you know, whatever they're trying to do. Additionally, another thing with that mindset, this technology, is we all have this brick in our pocket that literally has the entire world in it. It has the internet, it has all our social connections. I know personally, I think I only have one number memorized anymore, besides my own, and that's my parents, right? And like, I don't have anybody else's phone numbers memorized. My brother, don't know his number. I would have to go look it up. So it's things like those of like that, we are reliant on our phones. We are reliant on this technology just to even have our social connections. If I want to go and, you know, even complete Seva, I need to have my phone so that I can go onto the WhatsApp and post things. So it's things like that we need to keep in mind, that we are utilizing our technology and not necessarily being reliant on it. And I think that's also what's important, because I've thought about this a lot in terms of teaching. I've had to adapt how I teach to adapt to the change of society. I don't need to teach facts and figures. So again, for context, I am a math teacher. Yes, I need to teach the step algebra equations and what these vocab terms mean, but we can Google everything, right? We can, in fact, just Google all of the facts and stuff for history. And it's not so much, and same thing with a recipe. If you're trying to teach a kid or a sibling or how to, you know, cook something, they can Google the recipe. They can go find out on YouTube. All of our Indian recipes are on YouTube now, right? We have all of these aunties and uncles on YouTube showing how to cook rasam and all of these things. Of course, but it's not the same as having your mom there with you while you're cutting vegetables and you're cooking together. And it's about making those experiences more about the personal connection than necessarily about teaching how to cook, because again, they can find all of those things online. So it's about, again, changing our perspective to, okay, I don't want to be talking about things that they can do online. I want to make an experience so that they have to have those personal connections, because we all know nothing beats meeting someone face to face. As much as we love these Zoom workshops so that we can have these opportunities, because all of our schedules and all of our locations are different, it's not the same as getting to hang out with people in person and actually have a community that way. And we want to make sure that our teens feel that. Whenever I've told them, hey, can we like all put our phones down for like 5 minutes and just have a conversation, they always tell me they get more out of those 5 minutes of conversation than an hour spent on the computer. So we know that we need to utilize, what can we do to help utilize that? Another thing to keep in mind with that understanding is so many of our social media platforms nowadays are curated for For You pages, right? Their algorithm basically curates so that they know, they get to see exactly what they're interested in. And if they are not interested, they just get scrolled away. So it is important to keep that in mind, that yes, our attention spans have gotten smaller. And when I say them, I also mean myself. I think we can all say that, we get distracted more easily. Our attention spans are getting smaller. And that's another thing that we can relate to with them. So how can we work on, okay, I want to make sure that if we are going to have 5 minutes, let's make sure these 5 minutes are very meaningful. Maybe I'm not going to be able to hold your attention for a full hour, but let's at least spend 10, 15 minutes together and make it really intentional and meaningful. Put the phone away, put everything away, but then I'm going to let you have your, for 10, 15 minutes on your phone, and finding that balance. And in that same vein about, again, we have everything on this phone. They have so many choices now too. They have all this information at their fingertips. They have all these choices, and it becomes a decision paralysis almost of, I don't know what to pick. I don't know where to go. And again, that's where that algorithm sometimes will come in to make life a little bit easier. So maybe it might be just giving them the option of, hey, here are 2 choices. Why don't we pick one together? Or let's narrow it down to 3 options and then pick one together. This can be on an academic front, when you're, picking course schedules together, or when they're trying to decide, what, in the bigger level, what a profession are going to, what are those majors going to be? There was a comment in the chat about, we all have to have that computer science minor just in case. We'll have that conversation about, okay, maybe we want to have computer science somewhere. Let's have that conversation of, is that really necessary? Is there something else we can do that gets that same idea across of, okay, we want to have something that's marketable. Maybe it doesn't need to be computer science. Maybe it could be something else, right? So keeping in mind again that the change of our technology has kind of changed the way our brains function in a way, and how can we use that to still foster good connections and, again, relatability and understanding. And again, it all comes down to balance. I kind of alluded to this, but again, we don't want to fight the battle of technology, because it's not going away. It's going to be here. And it is a resource. It is an opportunity for us to, we now get to have more friends. We get to have a better community because of technology. But how can we then utilize that at our benefit while not also being sucked into it as well? So that was kind of my technology blurb that I wanted to add. And the one other thing I wanted to mention, Vichy talks a lot, and especially at youth camps, about how we want to teach our kids not to be smart kids, but to be good kids. And so while I have this moment, as someone who teaches in a community that is skews very highly Asian to our Hindu community as well, I teach Bala Vihar kids in my high school. I know how much academic pressure we put on our kids. We want them to do well. We want them to be successful in society. And usually that, when we talk about success, we mean money. We want them to get a good job. We want them to, and we say that out of love, right? We want them to have the stability and so that they can have they can buy a house, so they can not worry about money and those things. But we got to keep in mind sometimes that worrying about that 1 C+ that they got on that one test, in the grand scheme of things, does not matter. And I think we all know that, especially when we grow older and we get separated for that. But when we tell our youth, oh, you got a 68% on your test, you are now a failure, they feel that. They feel that. And even if it's just one test, and we know that it's just one test, and it's averaged out, and it's one test in one class out of, all 12 years of their schooling, they feel that, and it can snowball. And once we say, okay, you are now a D student, they're going to be a D student in all of their classes, even if they really aren't. And we want to keep in mind that we all come with very good intention of, we want our youth to be successful. We want them to be safe. We want them to have all of the resources available. But at the end of the day, the more important things to teach them are not math, are not history. Yes, they should be able to speak to people, but at the end of the day, it's not like, yes, you should be able to have your basic skills, but I don't care if you can do calculus. I care that you're a good human being. And I think that's something that I would like for all of us to keep in mind when we relate with our youth. And I think they understand that as well, as, when am I ever going to use this? You're not, but you are going to have to use patience. You are going to have to be able to be empathetic. You are going to have to be able to be a good communicator. And those are the things that I think we should all, as a community, and think about, how can we better make sure we're focusing on prioritizing that, being a good person, than necessarily being a smart or successful person. All right.
Hari Om. Thank you so much, Shruti and Jayshree, for your lovely insights. I am a firm believer that educators don't get the appreciation they deserve from society and just from the way that our policies and systems work. So really appreciate you being here and for everything that you do on a daily basis. So with that, we're going to open up for some questions. I think a lot of people in the community might want to ask you both questions, both from your Save Up perspective, from professional perspective. So we have about 5-ish minutes now, but they'll also stay back for a few minutes after 10 o'clock. If you have any questions, we can maybe take one or two right now.
I tend to always look at their positives, like their strengths. So it's a really tough one for me to answer. But I think with teens, because they tend to highlight a lot of their weaknesses, they will start saying, because their self-confidence already, whether it's academics or just, I'm not doing great in a sport, they already express that. So for me, I completely turn that around. And so I don't, I just encourage them a lot more. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I think that's where I think it's that understanding phase. Does that make sense? Like you have to be able to really talk to them. And sometimes again, it's the understanding and it's the approach, right? Sometimes you can't just ask them straight up front. Like if there's something that you really don't agree with the way that they're handling something, it's very hard sometimes to just ask them directly, you may have to go, this is what I do. So I don't know if this is the right thing, but I sometimes go around it in a different way. Like I might bring in an example again from another person's, story or something that we might have watched. Or what do you think about this? But really, my intention is a good intention, and that's where, we talked about being intentional, but also the intention should be a good one, right? You're not, I mean, it's your child. You're not trying to, and for me, the students that I teach, they're all my children as well. That's how I feel when I go into the classroom. So I think just being able to navigate, to get that answer, but not always like directly. Does that make sense? You might have to navigate it in a different way. I don't know, Shruti, if you wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, all I'll add is I like to, whenever I have that thought, like, oh, you're being lazy, I think to myself, hey, why are they being lazy? Why am I thinking of this? And then kind of keep going back. And eventually I get to the root cause or something else that probably spins it more positively. So I just keep asking myself why. So to me, when we say let's work smarter, not harder, is kind of the like that theme. I think it's more of let's be efficient, is kind of how I take it. And more so, we have to prioritize, right? Like let's fight the battles that are actually necessary and let's not worry about the little things that we don't need to worry about. So again, it's very much about prioritizing. Like it's important to be smarter in that let's focus on using our time to have this meeting and like let's prioritize what actually need to be done in this meeting. Everything else can be done, on our own. And I think that's kind of the way I take when people say that to me, I try to reframe it as, okay, let's prioritize what's important. And then let's not worry about these little things. I don't need to spend 5 hours on this one task when I can focus on this other thing that I know would be more useful.
And I think sometimes, going back to what Shruti said, what is the root of that, um, expression, right? Because it's very relative to everyone, right? What is working smarter, right? It depends on the child, right? So sometimes when you hear something so general like that, that's really something coming from society, right? You cannot just take that and say like that is for you, my son, or my daughter. That's how you should be because and I think that's where and I've done this myself. So, I'll sit right here and say I'm a huge culprit of this, right? Is that, sometimes we'll say, well, this is what everybody is saying, so we should do this as well. Does that make sense? It's really, it's very, very personal, right? What working smarter is. Yeah.
Okay, here you go, everyone. Just wanted to go through, we did our mid-year survey for Mentorship Sangha, so really appreciate everyone taking time to fill out our survey. Just wanted to go through the results, just share that your feedback is very valuable. Next slide. So we had about half of our community respond, which is great. Pretty good distribution across mentors and mentees. Please do reach out to us at chinmayamentorship@gmail.com if you are part of Mentorship Sangha and you don't know which pod you're a part of. That is important for how you receive communications and when we engage in more communication and breakout groups and things like that. But overall, good participation. Next slide. So the core of Mentorship Sangha is really to foster that authentic and deep relationship between mentors and mentees. So it's really great to see everyone meeting at least twice a month. I'm really happy to see that and that the connections are ranking pretty high. So we're happy about that. Next slide. So appreciate the feedback around frequency of communications. Just a reminder that our wellness workshops are mandatory to attend live and that our wellness workshop recording from the previous month will be available on the next wellness workshop. So for example, today, our last month's wellness workshop is available on the YouTube channel. So if you have any questions about that, just feel free to reach out to us. So happy to guide you to where they are. Slide 5, please. Next slide. So we love hearing about all the meaningful activities and workshops that you guys engage in with your mentor, mentee. Please keep them coming. We want to hear about them. We want to encourage others to do the same. So if you're part of the WhatsApp group, please do share. Love all of this. Next slide. Okay, so just wanted to share as you know, we take your feedback very seriously. So we heard more meetups this year. We have been prioritizing our in-person meetups in big cities. We've already done Chicago, DC is in the works, as well as Boston. And we're also going to be rolling out some virtual dinners. So for people who can't attend the in-person, we'll just be getting on a Zoom and having some informal satsang time. More pod gatherings. We do try to do that during our wellness workshops, but I think we're going to try to front load those next year in 2025. So you really get to know your pods early on. More communication regarding regarding our workshops. We will be doing our part in sharing via WhatsApp as well as emails. Conversation topics and prompts to reflect on. We're doing our best with our Monday musings and Wednesday wins. Feels harder to ask questions in workshops. This is solid. We're going to try to have maybe a more streamlined approach to asking questions, whether we compile them through a pod leader or maybe do like a one of those like systems where you can submit questions on an app ahead of time. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hri Om, everyone.